With an IQ of 60. Judge. Your Honor. There you go. Yeah. The microphone is off. Okay, is that better now? Okay. Leave it off? Okay. Yeah, I just turn it down so nobody can hear me at all, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, folks, I hope you're enjoying your gathering here at the Freedom Rally. We try to do these things as often as possible so that there's a bond developed, hopefully, between the people, because you don't get to be around like-minded folks very often. Do you ever feel like you're in a kind of in your neighborhood or family like a black sheep? Yep. You know, you want to talk to them about this stuff, they say, "What? What are you talking about? Where'd you get these radical ideas? Are you communist? You're not patriotic, are you?" You know, so you say, "Where'd you get these conspiracy theories from?" So it's kind of a nice variety and exchange where you come to a place where not only you get further education and conspiracy theories and the truth and what's happening out there, but you actually get to mingle around and get to know like-minded people who are truth seekers. And I tell you, I've always said to my students, when I used to do more live classes, that right next door to you sitting next to you is your friend. Get to know him, because everybody in your life, including your mommy and daddy, was a stranger to you when you first came out of your mommy. Okay? They told you this is your mommy, this is your daddy. You don't really know, do you?
I still don't know.
I still don't know. You know? They asked me, "What's your mother's name?" Well, I'm told her name is Monir, but I really don't know of personal knowledge. I don't recall. Okay? They asked me when I was born. Well, I was told it was October 9th, 1962, but that's hearsay. Yeah. So, you never know. Your best friend could be right here in this room. So I highly like to suggest you consider that idea, because again, the people who are truth seekers are just minds that are out there in society by themselves, but and when you find someone of like mind, you just kind of say, "Hey, great, we can support each other in our quest for truth, health, freedom, and justice." And fancy dress, yes. Before we go on with our awards ceremony, Rich Diamond want to say something, so I'm going to bring him up. Let's give Rich a hand of welcome again.
Hey folks, hope you're enjoying your evening and your dinner. I just want to take a few moments and recognize someone in the audience, if I could. I'm Rich Diamond with Realty Freedom. A lot of you saw me speak today and at several of these other rallies. But I was asked to present something to someone that's in the audience today that I actually had the same exact thought myself, so it really matched up. But I first came across this gentleman, I'm going to say probably 3 to 4 years ago. I was actually vacationing on an island, and I heard a radio broadcast to the fact that he was coming into my town. So I ended my vacation short, which I still blame him for, to come and see him speak, and it was an interesting endeavor. In doing so, we became instant friends, and since then I've learned a lot from him, and he's even become one of our students at Realty Freedom. And so I'd like to recognize him, if I may. This is an award in recognition of your relentless dedication, enthusiasm, and the love and passion that you have put forth daily for the betterment of mankind, and your commitment and desire to help each American live free now. We recognize you, Payman Montahea, as a true American freedom fighter. doesn't get these very often. He gives a lot of them away, so it's about time.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Well, that happens when you get married and you happen to be in love with your wife and have a wife like my wife April, who's in love with you and takes good care of you and thinks about these kind of stuff that that happens to you. Yeah, I got married after years of being a bachelor. I finally got remarried last year, so you're gonna see a lot more of this pretty smiling face next to me. So thank you, Rich. Thank you, honey.
I told the story how I met April too. I met her in a hotel room.
That is true. He did meet her at a hotel room when Rich and I were, going someplace, and she drove 12 hours with her two little kids, or my two, 14 hours to meet me there, and she got there 3:30 in the morning. 4:30 in the morning. Okay. Yeah. Anyhow, Rich made a good comment. One of the things I see it doesn't happen enough is that the people who really do put great efforts to bring about truth and really serve mankind don't get recognized enough. So we like to take this opportunity to recognize a few of those individuals, and I'd like to please assist me in recognizing and appreciating these individuals in a way that fits for you after I call the name up, please. The first gentleman I'm going to bring up, I met only very recently. And when I first heard his name, his last name was as complicated as mine. And so I thought, okay, I can handle that. He's a relative newcomer to the truth, freedom, quest justice, but it's interesting when I talk to him, he in his comments, he found out about this, found out about that. Did you know about this? Because, he's newer to this stuff. But I can see this person has a relentless commitment and desire to seek the truth and spread it wide open for everybody to know. And therefore, Freedom Law School, in recognition of your tireless commitment to expose and disseminate the truth, recognizes you, Eric Hufschmidt, as an American messenger of truth. Let's give him a hand, everybody.
Well, now I guess I have to say something. Well, all I can say is this reminds me of the software I make, because it's engraving software, and that's what the sort of stuff it does. But interesting. It's nice to get an award for all this. It's something I got into in such an accidental way, I suppose, because it's like I felt like, is anybody going to talk about this issue? I wasn't aware that there's like entire groups like you doing this on a routine basis, and there were other people out there. So it's a rather strange experience, to say the least. And it's nice meeting all of you, and it looks like I'll be, who knows, getting a lot of information out of this. A lot of stuff to tell other people too. So I guess this is how it's going to work, though. If anything comes of any of this, it'll be one person talking to another, one person getting so desperate he does something, and then others notice he's out there, and they say, hey, check out all this other stuff while you're finally, now that you finally woke up, or finally seen what's out there. So it's possible that this will happen to more people. And let's just hope so, at least. Let's hope it doesn't die out like so many things in the past. So good luck to everybody, and let's hope we make an effect somewhere.
The next person I'd like to recognize is someone who I've also met fairly recently. And he's a very likable personality. He's full of dynamic energy. He's just out there, you know. He's got lots of guts. I can tell you this. You know, he just sometimes I wonder if I'm going to get steamrolled over by him. But he has a very, very caring and really genuine and soft heart, despite the tank energy that he has. And he works very hard for the cause of freedom. He goes literally all over the world, if that's what it takes, and searches and plans, you know, how can he bring more freedom and liberation, you know, into life of many people. And he's done very well at it. He's come up with very grand designs that when I met him, I was impressed. And I tell you, I'm not very easily impressed by a lot of people in his field. So it says a lot that I think that he's done a heck of a job. And that's why I asked him to come and here and speak at this rally. And you heard from him earlier today. And therefore, Freedom Law School, in recognition of your tireless commitment to empower and prepare Americans to live free, recognizes you, Gino Castanovia, as an American freedom hero.
Well, I'm not one for talking like this, but thank you, and
roll us over. No, don't get him started. We'll be here all night.
I said it all today, and what I really want to say is thank you, Pam, and again, I'd like to acknowledge you for being one of the few people, especially in this field, that's willing to share the stage with people you have ideological wrestling matches with. So I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Well, the next person I'd like to recognize, I also have had some good ideological wrestling fun matches with, as Gino puts it. And he doesn't shy away from that. And he's put his neck out there for freedom and truth in such a big way. Many of you have heard his voice before, perhaps, before you met him. His voice literally has been heard by tens of thousands of people across this country and beyond, internationally. People who are looking for some more freedom, truth, and prosperity. And it was a pleasure when, after all the recommendations I heard of him, I finally had the pleasure of meeting him earlier this year. And you've heard of him before today, and I'd like to, again, recognize this gentleman also. Freedom Law School would like to recognize your tireless commitment to empower and prepare Americans to live free, and recognizes you, Johnny Liberty, as an American freedom hero.
Well, I want to thank everyone here tonight and all the many people that I've had as teachers and mentors over the year. No one person, no one individual can do this alone. And I'd like to describe the difference between a researcher and a plagiarist. Okay. A plagiarist steals from one source. A researcher steals from many. And I've been a researcher, and I've borrowed from many, many, many people over the years who've done a little piece of this walk and another piece of this walk, and all I've really done is compile this into materials and education that people can comprehend. And we will continue on this together, each one of us taking personal responsibility for what we create, and we'll move forward until we create, indeed create, a world of sovereignty and freedom for everyone. Thank you.
The next person I'm going to recognize, I've known for a while. I think close to 9 years. He's one of the earliest people that I went to a seminar, to a lecture circuit. And he actually is close to my age. You know, I thought when I went to his seminar, I was in my early 30s. I thought, oh, another young guy. You know, how about that? You know, but this person was one of those few that I've seen that didn't just go do some seminars here and there. He chose to find a very dynamic way to reach out a large number of people. And he's actually done quite well at it. He became now a syndicated radio show host that is heard across the country. And he's bringing out the message of truth, freedom, sovereignty, individual rights, and the Constitution of the United States to the people in a very assertive way to educate the masses so we can live free in America once again. Therefore, Freedom Law School, in recognition of your tireless commitment to expose and disseminate the truth, recognizes you, Brent Johnson, as an American messenger of truth.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. It says American messenger of truth. And in truth, I consider myself only a messenger, as each of you are. When I first started doing this, I started because the IRS put me in a corner. Okay, I really thought my life was over. No. I was throwing furniture. Okay, okay, I really thought my life was over. And a woman looked at me and she said, "Oh, you don't have to pay that." And I thought she was from another planet. I said, "This is Earth. This is the IRS." She said, "No, you don't have to pay that." I was introduced to a woman who became my teacher. And I told her, "If you'll teach me about this, I will take this information and I will spread it around all over the place." It's not just true I'm here in the nation. I've got listeners all over the world who have been responding to the message of truth and of freedom. And so while I'm very, very grateful to you for this, and for the acknowledgement, and the acknowledgement is wonderful, I would ask all of you to remember that each of us in this fight is but a messenger. If any one of us falls, the message continues. And as long as one of us remains to speak the words of truth and of liberty, we cannot but seek victory. We cannot but find victory, because they cannot get rid of all of us. They can't. That's the thing. If you've heard my show, at the beginning of the show I always say, they may take our lives, defame our character, steal our property, but they cannot kill the truth. So I would adjure to all of you, carry with you the message of truth and of liberty. Everywhere you go, spread it around. The seeds will take root. In the end, we cannot help but win. Thank you very much.
Well, the next person I'd like to recognize is not a person. Okay? It's a couple. It's a pair. Okay? And I met this pair in Los Angeles area, oh gosh, close to 10 years ago. It seems old history now. And this couple was involved in putting together a group in Los Angeles called the Granada Forum, where, how many of you heard about Granada Forum? Been to their meetings? That's right, in North Los Angeles area. And this group was, and the succeeding group that has now followed it now keeps bringing interesting speakers about subjects of truth, health, freedom, justice, the things that really matter in life, the truth. Then I found out this gentleman became a activist for jury rights and jury powers to restore justice in America. In fact, he donated his hard work and energy and provided the true-false material for the Fully Informed Jury Association for us for free. Like, here, go ahead and get it out. Even though he lived a very modest life himself. And he is, I should say not him, he and she have put their lives literally on the line for the cause of freedom and justice. They have started a whole new group that is so energized across the country. I keep hearing their names. Especially on the internet, the word jail for judges, okay, is like, oh yeah, I heard about that before. And so therefore, Freedom Law School, in recognition of your tireless commitment to the restoration of accountability and responsibility in government, recognizes you, Barbara and Ron Branson, as American heroes of justice.
Thank you, Payman. Sticker. That's what are you talking about? I just say, who else, would fit this,
Well, Payman, thank you very much. Known each other for many years. And I take back all the bad things I've said about you. Well, folks, I consider this a real honor, and I thank you for this recognition, and it'll be hanging on my wall.
Amen.
It'll be my pleasure to address the audience tomorrow morning, and in one sense I hope I'm not too hard on you. On the other sense, I plan on pulling all the stops out. Some of you have not heard our message and what we're doing, but I've got to tell the truth anyway. Thank you all very much, and I guess I'll let my wife say a word.
I wanted to acknowledge one lady here. I'm trying to see which one it was, came to our table and said, I want to thank you for telling us about this freedom rally. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't even know about it. We traveled cross country. And as we speak, my husband is still traveling. I guess they came separately. And they're going to be here for tomorrow for when we speak. And she told me her name, but I couldn't even remember the name. But she says she's on our email list. And she thanked us. She said, I want to get one of your T-shirts. So that just tells you the effectiveness that our communications are excuse me, I'm choking up. That our communications are having. And I'm so grateful to all of you. And the thing is, without an accountable judiciary, we've got nothing. It starts with the judges. And as soon as we get an accountable judiciary, we'll have an accountable government, an accountable IRS, everybody. Let's start with the judges. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Pam. God bless you.
The next person I'd like to recognize is a soft-spoken gentleman. He wouldn't impress you with some razzazz, pizzazz, that type of thing. But he's very effective, and he's very courageous. He's taken a very bold stand against tyranny, against lying, against dishonest government, and against treasonous officials who knowingly violate their oath to God and the American people to uphold and defend the Constitution. I met this man a few years ago, and since then, he's become a very good friend of mine. I've had the pleasure of getting to know him, work with him on a professional basis, and getting to know him more as a friend as well. And it's really great because this man is willing to put his picture up in full-page ads in a national paper like USA Today, talking to one of the most powerful agencies in the federal government, the IRS, and say, you are wrong for lying to the American people. And who am I? I'm just a human being. I was one of you, but I'm not really one of you because I seek the truth, I seek the justice, and I'm going to take a stand against you for your wrongdoings, no matter what comes. And you know he's been watched. You know everything he does, he's being scrutinized by the government because they are afraid of him and what a difference he can make. And he does make a difference. Therefore, Freedom Law School, in recognition of your tireless commitment to expose the truth and restore accountability and responsibility to government, recognizes you, John Turner, as an American freedom hero.
Oh, Paimon, Paimon, Paimon. I was listening to him say all those things, and I thought, who is this guy talking about? Until he said something about the USA Today, and I said, oh, geez, that crazy guy that was silly enough to let himself be pictured in that USA Today ad. You know, I have met so many neat people, wonderful people, since I've had opportunities to come to meetings like this. And most of the time I'm not speaking, most of the time I'm just in the audience. But lately I've been speaking a little more. And the people that I meet are always people who are sincere, honest, courageous on their own right. We all have our stories. My hat is off, if I was wearing a hat, my hat is off to each and every one of you for being here, for putting aside whatever activities you might have rather been doing, whatever you would rather have been spending some of your money for being here, for the travel, the expense of being here. This business of freedom means different things to different people, doesn't it? Some people it just means to be able to become a millionaire if they want to become a millionaire. Some people it means to be left alone if they want to be left alone. That's the neat thing. It means a lot of different things to each and every one of us. I appreciate Paimon and now his wife April joining him to make all the sacrifices that they have to make to I don't know the tip of the iceberg, I'm sure, as to what goes into putting on an event like this. The sleep they lose and all the other things. But if we don't all make sacrifices to get together, to share our ideas, to support one another, to hear what people are saying and thinking, to have an opportunity to bring somebody that may have been thinking that you were a two-headed person, some kind of person that was very strange. If we don't have a forum like this on a regular basis to bring people to hear crazy ex-IRS agents that, are telling the government that they're doing it wrong, and all the other people that are saying what they're saying, then our effectiveness will be that much less. We need to have people like Paimon and April and others. Steve Hempling is here, and he does his share of inviting people to come and speak and talk. And this is not just about income tax, as you all know. This is about so much more than that. I just happen to be a guy that worked for the tax agency, but this has to do with so many things that are is of vital concern to all of us. My hat is off to each and every one of you. I want to step down by saying, don't ever give up. Don't ever lose hope. Sometimes when my wife says to me, "Why are you doing this, my dear beloved Don Quixote?" She means no disrespect by that. She supports me and understands what I'm doing and why.
She got you into it.
She got me into it, yes. Whenever she used to ask me, "Don't you miss your little cushy government paycheck and the stability in our life and all those things?" And I go like this, "Remember that little audio tape that you had me listen to?" And she goes, "Zip."
No, but if she had known what was going to happen after that, I guarantee you she would have never put that tape in the tape player. But I encourage all of you to, sometimes it just seems overwhelming. Why are we bothering? Why are we doing what we're doing? Life is so short, is it not? And now that I'm close to 50 years old, I just think, man, I remember when I was 12 years old, and it seems like yesterday. But here's what keeps me going. And maybe this doesn't apply to you, maybe it does, but for me, I think about my lovely little daughter, and I think about the grandchild, hopefully, that one day I will have, the grandchildren. And I think about doing my part, just the proverbial 2 cents. I can only do what I can do, and you can only do what you can do. But together, if we lock our arms, put aside the little petty differences that occur when people get together and talk, and focus on what we agree on, and basically tell the beast that we're not going to tolerate it anymore, I think we can make a difference. So as I step down, I just encourage you to not lose hope, to be ever vigilant in the things that you believe in, and support one another. Find those things that you can identify with in each person, and support that person, and be strong. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, the next person that I'd like to recognize, I met by reading a book that she wrote, and a stand for courage for the truth. And by writing that book, this lady, who's a professional, who's got lots of years of study and degree, lots of hard work and energy to put on the line to get her life ahead, put it all at risk, and became a sort of a pariah and the black sheep of the community that she's involved. She took that stand, the bold stand, to stand for the truth and say it as loud as she can, that human beings' lives are being unnecessarily put at risk because of politics in her field, politics in the field of health, by the people in the field of health and pharmaceuticals and petrochemicals who all work together to poison us, okay, are lying to the American people because of politics and favoritism and lack of human conscience. Well, I read this lady's book. I was very interested in it. That was in the 80s. And then lo and behold, about a year ago, I found out that this lady has a book on alternative therapies, you know, the video on which ones work and what doesn't work. And I thought, oh, wow, this is cool. I know this person, you know, if she's going to say it, she's going to say it the way it is. The way, you know, she's done the homework for me. You know, I tell you, I always believe in, there's 2 ways you can learn, right? School of hard knocks, right? And the other one is school of prior knowledge. That's what Rich Diamond taught me, okay? And I thought, boy, I'd like to learn from her school of prior knowledge, and so I did. And I kept hearing her name come up. And this person took such a bold quest to find the truth. And then when she found the truth, she literally stuck her life on the line for the truth that she knew to be real. How many people do that? How many people believe in something, but they do otherwise anyhow? Well, this is more convenient. You know, this is, you know, maybe I should do this one. But this person was taught by her father not to just go along, to just get along. Not to have the herd mentality, but to be a true, thinking, acting, sovereign individual that will act upon the truth And she did. She put her life on the line, and she cured herself. She cured herself of cancer, deathly disease. But after doing that, she took another major, bold step. She decided to expose her newfound truth to the entire world, even though she was going to suffer further humiliation and ostracization by the practitioners of her field, who for years were her friends and colleagues, because of her bold stand. And because of her bold stand, in addition to saving her own life, she has saved countless others. And as long as she's alive, she's going to save countless more. And who knows, her stand for the truth and health and caring for people is going to save countless other lives long after she's gone. Therefore, Freedom Law School, in recognition of your tireless commitment to expose the truth and restore health, freedom, and justice, recognizes you, Lorraine Day, as an American health and freedom hero.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here because I've been banned from most places. So when someone invites me now, it's a real treat. I truly have. In the last 6 months, I've been banned from at least 11 different major organizations. I've been banned from the Art Bell Show, which I've been on many, many times. I was called by the producer because I'm rattling too many cages. I will never be on that show again. I've been banned from major whole religious denominations have banned me. And so, but you know, if you're speaking the truth, that's what's going to happen. So you just keep pushing on. And there will always be ways to get the truth out. And I also should say that it's a good thing I'm talking to you after you've eaten, because I wouldn't approve of anything you've been eating. So you'll find that out tomorrow. But I appreciate this. Thank you very much.
The next person I'd like to recognize also had a very long years of working in the system, so to speak, as an insider. In fact, he was a former government prosecutor. His job was to, go after people and try to put them to jail. And then he went out in the private field of defending and being an advocate for people's righteous causes. And he saw a lot of corruption in the judicial system that he just couldn't stand. A lot of people got along and said, well, that's just the way it is, and we're just going to have to just live with it. The judges have a lot of power, awesome, godlike power, especially federal judges. So just don't upset the apple cart. Just go along. But he couldn't get along. He did not have a herd mentality either. And he started an organization that has dozens of lawyers in place now, all across these United States of America, dedicated to going after corruption in government officials and curbing, limiting, or destroying such corruption and criminality. Has made a very, very major push in that area. And he's so hardworking and so tireless in doing that that even though he wanted to be with here very badly with us tonight, and earlier today he was also scheduled to be at another organization event speaking, because he wanted to come out here and meet people like you, wonderful freedom lovers, people who care about truth and justice. Many of you in this audience I know are donors to his organization. But first he called us and said, can you give me even a later flight so I can come? I can do more work done. And then his secretary called and apologized to us that he won't be able to make it to us because he's going to be working throughout the weekend, to get this job done for truth and justice. That's commitment, folks, when people are willing to really literally work 7 days a week for truth and justice. And therefore, Freedom Law School, in recognition of your tireless commitment to expose the truth and restore honesty and responsibility to government, recognizes you, Larry Clayman, as an American hero of justice. And since Larry himself could not be here tonight, we would like to ask that Mike Pendleton, who heads up the West Coast branch of Judicial Watch, to please come up, accept this award on Larry's behalf, and to give it to Larry as soon as possible. I bring you Mike Pendleton, your speaker for the evening. I should add, Michael was the chairman of the Jail for Judges at one time. Yeah. That's it.
All right. Am I on now, or am I just? I'm on. Okay. All right. Well, that's a beautiful beautiful plaque, and I will start off by saying that Larry sends his regrets and his regards. Regrets that he can't be here, and regards to all of the work and to all of the people here tonight. You all obviously have something that's very near and dear to my own heart, and I know near and dear to Larry's too, and that's freedom. It is really, in so many ways, the essence not only of what we work for, but it's also the essence of America and what America is about, to me and to many of us here tonight. And I think, fortunately, that freedom and law in the same sentence are almost difficult to utter these days because of the fact that the law has become so perverted, not only by judges but by legislatures and those people who are charged to execute the laws, that we have it's almost difficult to put those two words together. But I think if it's possible to do it, it certainly is here tonight. And the idea of Freedom Law School, I really like that idea because I suffered through a law school, and most of the people, yeah, I know, I am a lawyer, don't hold it against me though. And I try not to focus in on that. It's amazing to me how over the years, I graduated in '92, over the years I'm less and less inclined to tell people what I am. It's horrible. I mean, you think about it, I beat around the bush. And when they ask me, what do you do for a living? I beat around the bush. I try to avoid what I am. And it's really because I have become incredibly disturbed, and I know there are other lawyers in the audience who, hold the same kind of disdain, not only for my profession, but for the people, many of the people who practice it. And so I try as best I can. Of course, joining an organization like Judicial Watch, you do happen to run into some of the better attorneys, those attorneys who are like-minded, and it does make the practice of law a lot easier job. But it doesn't stop the fact that most of the time I am really discouraged with the state of my profession and those that practice it. And so, I'll start off by saying that. Also, hopefully endear myself to you so that you at least listen to a few things that I have to say tonight. I mean, initially, the old joke about it, how do you know a lawyer's lying, his lips are moving? Let's try to not at least. I hope that you understand that there are lawyers, and by the way, I do have to say this too. There are lawyers out there that are really fine people. They're few and far between, but they do exist. They do exist, and it's important to say that too. I had a special request to talk a little bit about how Judicial Watch was formed, and Larry Clayman's initial introduction to essentially the policing of judges, which is not exactly the kind of thing lawyers normally do. I mean, normally it's the other way around. It's judges policing lawyers and telling lawyers how they ought to act, what they can say and not say, and so forth. So Larry's experience, of course, began with a judge, and I will leave him nameless tonight because I'll let Larry throw the name out there. I'm less inclined to throw the name out. But he encountered a federal judge. Now, those of you who have ever been involved in a federal court or seen a federal judge in action, they are the lords of the manor. I mean, literally. You do not say or speak. I mean, you walk into the shrine of law, and you better act and do exactly what you're told. And, Larry's inclined to, stand up to judges and to people in the courtroom in particular. And this particular judge was a federal judge in Los Angeles, and he not only told Larry that his client was a disgusting so-and-so in court, but he was obviously and apparently drunk in the courtroom when he walked in. And he lambasted lawyers on both sides. He was an equal opportunity offender. But he was really quite vicious, and of course Larry said, "I can't believe this. This fellow's obnoxious." But you know what you find out about federal judges is they are unaccountable, they're unelected, they do what they want, and you better fall in line or you'll find yourself in jail. Period. And so it's one of those things where you tread very lightly. Now the other problem with a federal judge is he can destroy your client, and you're supposed to be there representing a client. So you have to be careful to some extent. It turned out that Larry lost the case, and because he dared to speak up and defend both his clients and actually the other lawyers who were being lambasted in the same way. And Larry walked out of that case essentially saying that there was no way that he could continue the practice of law without some sort of an organization or some sort of activity in the area to try to bring these out-of-control judges into some semblance of accountability. And that became his impetus to found Judicial Watch and ultimately begin to try to bring in judges into line. Of course, what ended up happening is that as he began that process, the Clinton administration was brought into office. And of course, when you have the most corrupt administration in the history of America in the White House, it becomes a little more difficult to focus in on judges when you have the Clintons in office and an actual criminal enterprise being established in the White House. And of course, not only established, but operating without impunity, actually carrying out incredible criminal acts, treason among them, and some people speculate murder. If you take the list of 58 people that was placed on Linda Tripp's chair by Monica Lewinsky, letting Linda know that this is what happens to those. By the way, we have a copy of this on the website. It says right on the top of it, this is what happens to people who mess with Bill. And there was 58 people. Those 58 people had all been murdered. And it was a clear message to Linda that she ought to keep her mouth shut. It is without question that the Clintons were involved in this kind of radical criminal activity while sitting presidents. So it became difficult to focus in on judges when we had such a problem in the White House. And that's precisely what we began to do, and that is to begin a series of Freedom of Information Act lawsuits against the Clintons, that administration, and essentially the battle. And of course, during that battle or that request for information, we uncovered John Wong, which led to the beginning of Chinagate. And of course, Chinagate, as many of you already know, was essentially the giving of money by Chinese communists to the Clinton administration to fund his campaign activities, to fund his re-election, his election and then re-election. And the clear implication of that, of course, is treason, among other things. And then the uncovering of John Wong and the subsequent activities associated with Chinagate. And then all of us asked, at the time, of course, 92, here come the Republicans, and everyone says, oh, we're going to have this great change, and we're going to be bringing in all of the, some of the radical aspects of government. And what we found out is that Hillary had very cleverly designed something called Filegate to make sure that the Republicans kept their mouths shut. And she had a laundry list of people that she had collected raw FBI material on and had put it into a database. And that has been commonly come to be known as Filegate. We took depositions from over 18 people that essentially came in and said that Hillary was the mastermind of Filegate. There was no question about it. The people who she hired specifically to work on it, to build the database and so forth, were identified, and we did depositions with a lot of them. And without exception, they all said that she was the mastermind. Of course, Hillary didn't even know any of these people, according to her. And so we moved along the line with Filegate and some of the other cases, but we went back. I wanted to go back a little bit and review kind of how all of this began. I mean, one of the things that's happened since I went to law school is I discovered that the law itself has been perverted. The Constitution has been ignored, and really the idea that we could have a government in Washington, D.C. that exists as it does is unconstitutional. There's no question about that. And it's so far from what the founders intended. When you read things like Thomas Jefferson saying the least government is the best government, or the least government possible is the best government, the idea that our founding fathers were really frightened, and rightfully so, of a large centralized federal government, and designed the Constitution to make sure that it never happened. And Larry, I know, is fascinated with this very same thing. How is it possible that Washington, D.C. exists? It's not possible, because it is, by its nature, unconstitutional. And so when I went through law school, I was fascinated with the idea that, and of course I had this, I can't even remember the name of it. It was the name of this law school professor who was this crotchety old fellow who just hammered home all of the basics of the law. And that paper chase, that was my view of what the Constitution and what law school is about. So I went in thinking this is going to be some very difficult and just hammer that Constitution. What I found out in 1 year of constitutional law was not a single time were we required to read the text of the Constitution itself. That was point number one. It was never once, in fact, there was an asterisk on the first or second page of the constitutional law book that we used, and it had the Constitution in the appendix. But it was one of those things that was essentially stated that it was archaic and outmoded to even really kind of look at it, because it didn't matter. What mattered was what judges said about it. It didn't matter what the text said itself. What I would, and of course I can see tonight that I'm standing in front of a group of people who have read the Constitution, or at least have some idea of what it's about. But if you don't, take the 20 minutes that it takes to read the Constitution, and you will know more than 99% of the lawyers in this country about it, because they just aren't required to read it. And I can also tell you that this is not an isolated incident. It's not as though I just went to some lousy law school. Unfortunately, the top law schools in the country, we had a group called the Federalist Society, and they, when they were allowed to have, that's a whole other story, but they refused. They gave the gay law students, the black law students, the women law students, every group in the world could get money to have their groups. When I was in law school, there was one group that couldn't, and that was the Federalist Society. Okay, they refused to give us money, and the reason? We had this radical notion. See, we stood up for this radical notion that the Constitution is what it says it is, not what judges say it is. Essentially, that's it. The judges don't make it up. That it is what it is. That's a radical concept in law school, because what it does is it initially says, or it essentially says, that you can't just make it up. And the radicals in America today have implemented most of their agenda through the judiciary. And the only way that they could implement it is through the judiciary. They couldn't do it through the legislature. And most executives wouldn't execute it because it isn't the law of the land. So The only way it could happen is through judges. And when this radical notion begins to be exposed, they can't allow that. And so the Federalist Society is a group that is essentially not allowed to exist. We went ahead and I spent 3 years forming my Federalist group, and by my third year we had a total of 15 members, bold people who dared to utter these things. And I fought for 3 years to get funding. And of course, we went all the way to the Maryland State Legislature to get it. We did finally end up getting the money, and we all voted unanimously not to accept it, of course. But it was a battle, and it was one worth fighting. The idea, though, and of course, if you followed the nomination battle with Judge Bork, I think he exemplified the battle itself, that he simply said, I am not going to see things in the Constitution that aren't there. And I'm not going to change things that I don't like. And I'm not going to ignore things that are clearly there. And I'm not going to make up things that aren't. Basically what he said. And for that, he is not on the Supreme Court and could never be. Because you must be willing to play politics with the Constitution to sit on the Supreme Court. The closest thing that we have to someone who, and I know Clarence Thomas. I've met him a couple times, and he's come to speak at some of our events, and he's a fine fellow. He's the closest thing to someone who would stand for the Constitution, the text of the Constitution itself. Unfortunately, even he has been had some decisions that I would question over the years. But the bottom line is it's very difficult to get through the process, to have any chance whatsoever to be a Supreme Court justice or a Court of Appeals judge or anything else without being compromised. And the reason for that, by the way, is that we have weak legislature. We have a weak Senate. We have a weak House of Representatives. We have weak charactered people who are in those positions. And they are easily compromised. And we were talking earlier about what is it we can do? We have to elect people that have character, period. Unless we do that, the only other option is to dismantle the monstrosity in Washington, and I frankly think that's the only way that it's ever really going to work. The bottom line is that monster in Washington, D.C. shouldn't exist, and we have to find a way to dismantle it. I'm not sure that we're ever going to be able to do that, but the power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I believe that, having spent about 9 years in the D.C. area and watching the confirmation hearings and watching the Senate operate, and essentially confirming 99.9% of the Clinton appointees during that 8 years with a Republican Senate by unanimous consent, which means that not a single senator voted against them. They were just ushered through. And it became apparent to me that it was really a rubber stamp, and that there was a decision that had already been made in the cloakroom. And that essentially what we had is a rubber stamp program and a group of senators that didn't care much for our liberties. And I became very disillusioned in D.C., and I was happy to leave, to tell you the truth. When Larry said, "Hey, we need to open up an office out in California," I was pleased to get out of Washington, D.C. I don't know how he stands it, because it's the old cesspool. The theory about the cesspool, how all the big chunks float to the top, and that's why a cesspool is very much like our government, and we have to weed that out. I'm not sure exactly how we do it. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about California and some of the activities we're doing here in California, because it's important. We're a field office, and you've got the field general, old Clayman, is in D.C. And he handles a lot of the national stuff, and that's great. I mean, we need to do that too. But I also think it's real important that we focus in on the state of California. And ultimately, one of these days, who knows, we might actually dismantle the monstrosity and the power come back to the states and then maybe even to the local governments. Who knows? But when they do, and if and when it happens, we're going to be ready for them. Because what we really need to do is organize ourselves at state and local level. And that's what Judicial Watch's plan is. So the California field office is what I'm really involved with, and I'm glad to, and I don't know if we'll have time for questions at the end. That's up to Paymon. I'll be glad to entertain questions as they relate to some of the national stuff. I'll get into some specifics more about the state, because to me, and of course we're all Californians, or at least most of us are, and so some of the stuff that we're doing here in the state has particular interest to those of you who live here. And so one of the programs that we've started is something called the Judicial Monitoring Program. Now it's on a very small scale, and it's something that we have really just started in the LA Superior Courts. But we have started it, and we have a former deputy DA with 32 years inside the system who we've hired. And as you can imagine, his name is Sterling Norris, and as you can imagine, when he walks back into the courts, he retired from the system. And then when he walks back in the courts, it just eats him up to see what is he doing back here? What does he want? The judges are squirming on a regular basis. We don't have it's not a huge program, but it already has been quite effective, just in the sense that they're beginning to wonder who is Judicial watching? Why are they watching us? All right, they're nervous, and that's always a good thing. We're like the guys that are running around, from tree to tree, and they think there's 100 people out there, but there's really only 2 or 3 of us. Okay. Now, I don't want you to take that the wrong way. I'm not saying anything about revolution or anything else, but I will say we did have a little conversation about this earlier at our table. I don't promote any sort of violence, but I do think what we have to do is radical. It is to some extent extreme, in the sense that we do stand alone often. When we were suing Dick Cheney, they called us a judicial watchdog. When we sued Bill Clinton, we were extremist right-wing lunatics. And that's the difference. There's an establishment media out there that likes leftist, socialist causes. It's just the way it is. We have to be willing to stand up and in spite of that, and say the truth, no matter what they call us. And they're going to call us names. And so there's no question that we've been called all sorts of things out there. And we can't be afraid or stop because of that. The Judicial Monitoring Program is one of those areas where you can be sure the judges don't like us. And some of the things we've uncovered, or at least observed, is amazing. I mean, they aren't there very much. And now this is a group of people who constantly complain about the fact that they don't have enough judges. And yet, when you go to the courtroom, they're rarely there. In fact, and this is a great story, Judge Murphy. Judge Murphy was gone over 400 days in a 2-year period. Pretty good job if you can get it, right? But the thing is there was finally, after a 2-year period, some questioning of where is Judge Murphy, finally. And it turns out that Judge Murphy was going to medical school in the Caribbean while being paid as an LA Superior Court judge. And he comes back, and he decides to come back to a Judicial Performance Commission, finally brings him in after months of everyone in the court. It was a joke. Everybody in the court said, you have Murphy's down in the Caribbean. I mean, everybody knew where he was. Everybody knew what he was doing. The other judges, the clerks, everybody knew. It was a joke. Murphy finally comes back, and what do they say? Well, Murphy has a phobia. He says, I have a phobia. They said, well, what is your phobia, Mr. Murphy? Or Judge Murphy? He has a fear of the courts. Judge Murphy has a fear of the courts. And I don't know why they didn't ask it. I wish they would have. Was and the other thing was he couldn't sit for long periods of time. Is another problem? Well, the problem is in medical school, you sit for long periods of time. He was able to do that, but he couldn't do it on the bench. But I guess that went in with his phobia of having fear of the courts. In any case, what this points out essentially is that we have no accountability whatsoever. If someone can do that for that many days, and no one, and only through fierce, public attention and all the lights shining down on the cockroaches, did they finally do anything about it at all. And even after discovering this phobia and his activities, it still took him 6 months to fire him. He was still paid for another 6 months after that time, about 6 months. there are many other examples, but the problem is that we have a judiciary that's essentially unaccountable and unwilling to police itself. If you think the code of silence within the police department is bad, multiply it by about 100 when it comes to the judges. They absolutely refuse, and if you bring up anything or any sort of a problem, they immediately circle the wagons, and it's an amazing thing to watch. The other instance that I think is important, not that we uncovered Judicial Watch necessarily, but one that has been a great observational tool, and one that brings up a point. We talked about solutions earlier, and the grand jury is a great solution, by the way. The grand jury in the state of California has an incredible power and has incredible potential to rein in public officials, judges, politicians, etc., the whole bunch. That is one of the things the grand jury is tasked with. And of course, this particular individual, Judge Trammell, presents a great example of someone who could have been reined in by the grand jury system, because the district attorney at the time, Gil Garcetti, refused to prosecute someone who had multiple times raped a woman under color of authority by luring her back or bringing her back into his chambers and saying, okay, you want your husband to get off? You're going to have some sex with me. And he did it not only, I don't know if it exactly happened in the chambers, but it happened multiple times, over 19 times. He actually recorded it, and that's ultimately how he got caught. Now, audio taped. Bad enough. But in any case, it was found by someone who, I don't know, he left it in his house ridiculously. But here's the point. What do you think he was prosecuted for? You can't believe mail order fraud. Mail order fraud. That's the feds, because you know what? The state refused to prosecute him. The feds prosecuted him for mail order fraud. Okay, so he got 18 months, I think, in the neighborhood of 18 months for his mail order fraud. I'm not sure that he actually ever served any time. I think he did end up going down to Florida. But the bottom line is this fellow should be in jail right now. He raped a woman under color of authority, no question about it. The district attorney refused to prosecute him. It was an excellent opportunity. Unfortunately, at the time, we were not able to, but we will hope to do this in the future, and that's go directly to a grand jury. There's no reason we can't go. We tried to go to a grand jury directly over the Condit matter, and were refused multiple times, and the grand jury told us each time, well, unless the district attorney tells us, we can't do it. And that's exactly wrong. If you read the statute, there's nothing more clear, and that is that the grand jury tells the district attorney who to prosecute and when. And that's who we present our evidence to, is the grand jury, not the district attorney. So they've got things a little turned around. We're going to try to get a little education out there and see if we can't begin to get them to understand that what we need to do is have the grand jury police public corruption. Excellent tool. We hope to do that into the future. But those two examples really exemplify the kind of stuff that's going on out there. It's not an isolated case either. We have numerous cases, and like I say, we're going to document this and ultimately be able to put this out in some sort of a readable form that says how little time judges actually spend doing judge work and how much they're paid. We're going to be filing a suit here shortly also that has to do with double dipping. They're actually being paid right now an extra $30,000 in the county of Los Angeles. And the reality is what that amounts to is theft. Every single judge in LA County is stealing about $30,000 a year. And it's a constructive theft in the sense that they're accepting money that they know they're not supposed to be getting. We're going to expose that. It's in the millions of dollars. We're going to do it in a taxpayer lawsuit. And it'll be a fascinating case for us here in the California office, because it's going to involve taking on all of the judges in the state of California, essentially, but certainly those in the state in the county of Los Angeles. As you can imagine, we're going to have they're really going to love us at that point. You know, and actually, there's an additional $30,000. We think that there's multiple cases, and maybe even outside of the county of Los Angeles.
Closing down the trauma centers of the county because they don't have the money for that.
Right.
And yet they pay the judges all this money.
Exactly, and of course, the worst part of it is not. I won't quibble about how much they're making, because I don't know whether that's right or wrong. That's up to the taxpayers. But I know that they're not supposed to be getting any more than they're supposed to be getting. That much I know for sure. They know they're not supposed to be getting this money, and they've essentially told. I'm sorry.
Why do they get it in the first place?
Because they can. I mean, they're getting it essentially because they can, and they've actually told anyone who's questioned them about it, that you better keep giving it to us, essentially. Don't dare try to take it away. Or, you know, the state, it's a convoluted thing, and when we get it all worked out, we'll do press releases on it, and we'll do a big thing here in California about it, and it'll be more clear to you. And I'll be glad to talk to you afterward too. But the case itself will bring out that we have judges that have been so corrupted, not only by their own power, but by the system that allows them to continue on unaccountable, that we have a serious problem in the judiciary in the state of California. And we haven't even started on the federal judges yet. I mean, that's a whole nother problem. And I'll probably spend my lifetime, and I'm certain that my kids will spend their lifetime trying to sort this out. I do think it's a long-term problem. I don't think it's something that's going to be straightened out overnight. But the judges it was mentioned earlier that the judges are the place to start. There's no question about that. And the reason the reason that's true is because they are the guardians of our liberties. If we can't go to the court and sort out these ultimate situations, the reason that courts were established was so that we didn't have fighting and shooting and the shootout at the OK Corral, and the kind of justice that you saw in the former Soviet Union, and in many places around the world today. If we don't reestablish our court system to be legitimate and uncorrupted, we will ultimately end up in the streets over this. I mean, it's not my desire by a long shot. And believe me, Larry and I both have had lengthy discussions about this. Violence is obviously never the answer, unless, of course, at some point it becomes untenable. You know, it would be impossible for me to say that it's absolutely always wrong, because then we'd say our founding fathers were wrong. And we certainly can't say that. So there is a point. But let's hope that we can work together to get this done within the political system that we have set up. And there are many, many things. I've heard people say, oh, we're at the end of it. There's nothing else to do. There's plenty we can do. Plenty we can do. It's not anywhere near being over or close to over. But we have to do a lot of work. And it's going to take a long time to get it. But you know what? It took us 50, 60 years. We can argue over how many years it took us to get in this predicament. It's going to take us at least that long to get back out of it. And it's going to take probably longer and more work. And we talked also about this earlier, and I think it is important that, you know, minorities moved this country in exactly the wrong direction. Tiny minorities of people. I think tiny minorities can move it in exactly the right direction. And we have to be willing to work diligently, and work as hard in the right direction as others have worked to go in the wrong direction. And I think that's what needs to happen. I am hopeful. I do think it's possible, and I'm not really quite ready to give up on the ship. So at this point, I'd like to say thanks, and I think that's it. Thank you. Okay, I'm glad to take some questions. So
you touched briefly a minute ago about the question. You touched briefly about a minute ago about the relationship between the district attorney and the grand jury, and how they basically approve what happens there. Can you explain a little bit how things got to that point where that's allowed to happen?
Sure. I mean, it's laziness and people who are just uninformed. Most grand jurors are brought in and told how it was going to be, and the person who guides them through the process is the district attorney. The person who most of the time presents the evidence to them, almost always presents the evidence, is the district attorney. And they aren't given. It's not like they're given the statute, the law in the state of California that says that they are charged with telling the district attorney on what cases to take. So it's really a matter of them being uninformed, and I guess that's what the Informed Jury Society is all about, I mean, I suspect that's what it's about. My readings on Paymon has sent me some things, and I think that's a good thing for us to all work on. Is that, or if we're called as grand jurors, if you have the time, certainly serve on one. You know what they call grand jurors that do their job? Renegades. Renegade. They call them runaway grand jury, renegade grand jury. That's what they call them. And the reason is because they're doing their job. It's like those of us who stand up and tell the truth. We're lunatics. We're right-wingers. We're crazies. And so, you know, we have to be willing to do that, because you're going to, you know, this is what kills me about some of the politicians in Washington. They're going to be called what they're going to be called regardless of what they do. They might as well do the right thing. I mean, you know, they're going to be called right-wing lunatics. They might as well do the right thing. Yes, sir.
I have two questions, and then I'd like to make a brief comment about Judge Scalia, who I personally questioned 3 weeks ago in Chicago about, which will support what you just said. But
I'll leave the comments to Paymon.
Just a question, please. Just the two questions. Yeah. Okay. The two questions are: do you have anything in the works to help Bush or whoever get some pro-life or good judges in the Supreme Court and also at state level? And I had another question and I forgot it. I'll think of it later.
Okay.
We don't want pro-life judges anyway.
Okay. Well, how about if I answer it this way? We don't really we aren't really in the business of recommending judges. However, there are some people in the state that are working toward trying to find good judges. The problem is I don't know if you've noticed, but the Senate isn't confirming judges at nearly the rate that our friendly Republicans did for the Clinton administration. It's not working quite well in reverse, and the Democrats have always been a lot better at weeding out the good judges that might be appointed, and less. Republicans are lousy at it. They essentially give rubber stamps. The Democrats play hardball, and they always have. They'll weed out all the good ones as best they can, and they've done a pretty good job of that so far. I think they've only about a little over 40% have been confirmed at this point, and at the same time in similar administrations it's gone as high as 90. So Democrats know how to play hardball. Republicans aren't very good at it. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to know what kind of judicial campaigns you run in the state of California. Do your judges have gag orders on them so they cannot reveal their political agendas while they're campaigning, or are they free to say what they're all about?
Well, nobody asks them. Nobody cares. I mean, I shouldn't say nobody cares. No one really asks them. We get so many calls, and one of the things we're working on is to come up with not a voter information guide, but essentially a almanac of judges. There is one that's put out by the Daily Journal, but it's very one-sided and pretty much useless. What we're going to try to come up with something that is a little more informative. The problem is there's very little or no information on judges right now, and there's very little information gathered or any way to get the information. You can't call anyone and get information. It's one of the things we're definitely going to try to work on. The problem is we don't want to be. We want to be precise with what we do. When we come to a conclusion, we want it to be accurate. So it's not that we find one decision that's bad by a judge, but that we find a whole series of decisions, and that we see a pattern of bad decision making on a judge's part. That takes time. It's like building a case that a prosecutor might build against a defendant. And so we have to be precise, because as you know, every judge can make 100 mistakes. If we make one, they will rake us over the coals. So we have to be careful, and we are building a case against several judges right now. And what we have to do, though, is when we build that case, then we have to go out, and we won't do it in the political arena. We'll do it in a legal arena, and hope to bring some of them, get some of them prosecuted. Actually, it's possible to do that. It's very difficult, but it's possible through the grand jury and other ways. We need to find a renegade grand jury, though. Yes, sir.
Do you have any connection or fealty to an organization called A Matter of Justice?
No. No. Yes, sir.
Whatever happened to
He removed himself from the ballot. Got himself removed from the ballot. He's going to be prosecuted.
Whatever happened to Judge Klein?
Yeah, whatever happened to Judge Klein? Whatever happened to Judge Klein? Yeah, who is Judge Klein? Judge Klein, yeah. Yeah, we don't all know who Judge Klein is. Judge Klein was arrested for child pornography, both having it on his computer and for actually molesting a child. And he was in the middle, it was about 2 months before, actually 3 months before the election. And he was exposed, he had a diary that was exposed on radio, live radio, and KFI, I think. And so he turned out to be, well, he hasn't been prosecuted yet, but it looks like he's a pretty interesting fellow. And he removed himself from the ballot, and he's going to be prosecuted ultimately, or at least there's going to be a trial. Yeah, I want to say in the next month or two. It's soon.
One more question. Wasn't there like 20 other judges that signed a petition saying he's at least entitled to one free child molestation?
No. Well, no, not really. What they did is they had endorsed him prior to the child molestation coming out, and then after the fact, it all came out that he had all the endorsements of the judges. And needless to say, a few started backing out, but really only 1 or 2 came out publicly and said that they would no longer support him. There were still 18 that refused to say anything. I guess child molestation doesn't quite do it for some of them.
He's in the Caribbean studying medicine.
Yeah.
There's a quote from Thomas Jefferson where he says that the only anchor ever yet imagined by man by which a government can be held to the principles of its constitution is trial by jury. Do you feel that if the juries knew about their power to judge the law and render verdicts according to conscience, and I'm talking about the founding father jury, that's what juries did when the Constitution was written, that would work to restore the Constitution if ordinary people could judge the law again? There's an initiative in South Dakota right now that's going to be on the ballot along those lines, common sense justice.
Mm-hmm.
Do the people, in other words, do the people care more about the Constitution than the judges do? That's really my question.
Well, I mean, okay. What do you want me to restate the question? Okay. Well, that was kind of a long one. Basically, he wants to know if the people care more about the Constitution than judges do, and if a jury was to judge according to conscience rather than according to the law that might restore the Constitution. No, I don't think so. I mean, and the only reason I say that is because I don't think juries basically deal with the Constitution in the way that I'm describing it. They deal with criminal cases, and if you're talking about the Fifth and the Sixth Amendment, they may have some impact there. But basically, because they don't encompass the entire Constitution and the problems that I see in the interpretation of the Constitution, they can have an impact in a criminal sense. And I think that's, the moral sense. It's important for a judge or for a jury to have a moral implication involved in what it decides ultimately. Because here's the reality. In Blackstone's, you talk about Jefferson, it's true, but the backdrop to that is Blackstone's commentaries. And Blackstone says, or essentially the commentaries, and I'll paraphrase here, that any law that violates the law of God is no law at all. It doesn't exist. So if there's not a moral conscience within the actual law itself, if there's not a moral component of the law, then the law doesn't exist. Period. So if it violates God's law, it's not a law.
Well, that's precisely what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Should juries be told they have the power to say that?
I think jurors know that inherently. They ought to be told that, and to some extent, I think that's what the informed jury movement is about, and I think it's important that they do know that. I think it's even more important, though, for grand juries to know what their inherent powers are. And I'm talking not inherent powers, but in addition, the actual statutory powers that they have. They have incredible power. They can bring a judge before them. That's the beauty of it. Is if they knew the power that they had, they could bring a judge before them, a district attorney before them, a politician before them. And that's actually what they must do according to the statute. So it's one of those things where that information needs to be presented. along with these other things. There's a moral component to all our law, whether the radical leftists want to admit it or not. It exists. By the way, it exists like gravity, whether we like it or not. Yes, sir.
My question is, are you familiar with the law NESARA?
A law what?
NESARA. Approved in March of 2000.
I'm not.
It solves all the problems you're talking about. And
Really?
it's supposed to it's supposed to be enough.
Well, I can't wait to hear
I'll
it.
answer that later on. I got the answer for that later.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't ignoring you.
No. I was going to comment on the question about jury nullification as a clarification, because I didn't think the first time you answered it, you responded it. Then you went on and responded, and I took my hand down. No,
Oh,
that's
okay.
That's okay.
Huh?
What's his question?
Whose?
Just now.
Oh, no, he wasn't asking a question.
No, it was a clarification. Who's on first?
Okay. Well, any other questions? All right. Thanks a lot. Oh, I'm sorry. We got one in the back.
Does it possibly seem to you that it all operates on the law of thirds? 1/3 of the people are trying to do what's right and in order, 1/3 are not, and the other third are vacillating back and forth between those 2 points?
Sure.
In any circumstance or situation in which we do?
Right, and that's why majorities aren't movements. It's minorities, and a third is a minority, and it'll always be that way. The founders and the American Revolution was carried off by a minority of the people, and I suspect that it will happen in exactly the same way when we straighten our mess out. I hope that it never goes to the streets, but I don't have a crystal ball, so.
Question is, there's 2 states that are required to notify the petty juries that they have a right to rule the law as well as the facts. I don't remember what 2 states those are. Do you know offhand?
I thought one of them was Illinois, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the other one is.
Yeah. And what can we do to make it a requirement of all states that they let people know that they have the right?
That's what features.
Well, you'd have to have federal legislation, although I'm not sure that we'd want to have the feds telling us what we do in the state courts, so that wouldn't work. But you could go through the state. You'd have to go each state legislature essentially, and it may take an amendment of the Constitution depending on how it was worded. But it's certainly possible to do.
Another route would be the initiative.
Absolutely. That's what, when I say amend the Constitution, I don't even consider the way the legislature might do it. It would only be the initiative.
That's precisely what the FIJA, the Fully Informed Jurors Association, is proceeding to try to do, which is get constitutional amendments in each state,
right,
and ultimately on the federal level to do precisely that.
Right. I'm not sure I would want it on the federal level, but just.
As a point of information, the reference to South Dakota. South Dakota at this time, for the first time in our history, has an amendment on the ballot that's being voted on this Tuesday. So they have used their initiative process to amend their own constitution to allow jurors the right and the power to judge the law, along with the sentencing laws in every state case.
Great. Good. Well, that's essentially restating what is anyway, but that's good that they do that because it is important. Yes, sir.
Is Judicial Watch greatly aware of Bob Scholl's and We the People's efforts to basically seek a First Amendment petition for redress of grievances? And if so, in general, what does Larry Klayman think about his efforts to try to compel the government to respond to the questions that they've raised over the last 4 years?
I don't know that Larry's. I'm not that aware of it, so I doubt Larry is. He could be, but I doubt it. I'm sure we'd like to be. One of the things we have plenty of. I'm not going to say we have no shortage of cases. However, those cases that have a particular national significance and those that have to do with the IRS, we have a particular interest in. If that's what you're talking about.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and so that's something I'd like to get more information on that. Certainly. So you can send it to me or. We'll get together. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
Did your office play a part in getting Judge Gold to resign? And if so, could you elaborate on that?
Sure. Well, I think we did. You know, it's hard to ever know for sure. But Judge Gold, I know Paymon wants to know who Judge Gold is. Judge Gold is a fellow, and actually his background is one where we took out to look at his record. He had a mysterious record of finding for or against women and taking their kids away from them, essentially. And he had done this over a period of a pattern, and we were able to establish that pattern. We exposed it on a series of things, and he uses a theory called parental alienation syndrome. And it's a bizarre concept. I don't really want to get into it because it's bizarre. It essentially allows molestation of little kids to continue because the parents always lie about it, and it's this convoluted theory. Bottom line is he's bought into this theory. He's also had a very disastrous divorce and some other things. The bottom line is that Judge Gold had a pattern of finding what we consider to be erroneously. So what we did is we did our best to expose that and wrote to the chief judge and the Judicial Performance Commission and newspapers and of course the women that were having their children taken away from them were doing their best to expose it all as well. And so between us, and I think the cumulative effect of all of it is Judge Gold, we didn't remove him, unfortunately. We would have loved to take it to that point, but he resigned before that and actually is making a far better living now than he was before. He went right on to arbitration and mediation and actually taking on some of the very cases that he was removed or that he resigned from. But at least he's not on the bench anymore, and we did have a little something to do with that. We try not to take too much credit because often you really never know what ultimately did the trick. But he was one that he felt the heat, and the chief judge was putting pressure on him to resign. Unfortunately, these judges have real cush jobs when they leave, and they actually make more money off the bench than they do on.
Grand jury, years ago we dealt with some people in the grand jury who tried to do independent investigation, and the district attorney flat refused to do anything on their side.
Right.
Is there some remedy in California?
Sure, absolutely. You go to the press. If you ever get on a grand jury, call Judicial Watch for one thing. I mean, immediately.
Years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all right. We'll forgive you this once. But no, I mean, in the future, if anybody gets on a grand jury, immediately, and you're of a mind to start laying statutes on people. You know, Paymon has all the information too, but we have all. You know, we're pursuing this actively. Because a grand jury is a great way. Any 12 people in the state of California can take on any issue in California. We find one grand jury that'll do it. Of course, you know, they'll be lambasted, but we'll have a heck of a time with them, and it'll be you know, we can rein in some politicians. We'll bring some politicians in. I mean, Condit would have been a great one because he was clearly guilty of perjury, and we could prove it. And we tried to get a grand jury to take it, and we couldn't get one. But we'll keep trying. Yes, sir.
Somebody told me the other day, actually last night, about Irwin Rommel's School of Law, where they actually went against, they were attacking some judges, and they found this one judge, and they brought some kind of an action against him, supposedly. I just wanted to know if you could verify this. They showed how he ruled this way and this way and this way and this way, and he was really inconsistent, and they actually had him off the bench and thrown into a mental institution. Can you verify that?
No, I can't.
I can't. You're talking about Michael Brown's 372Gs. 28 372Gs notices judicial complaint. He has successfully removed from the bench no less than 3 judges. And that's what you're referring to. And prosecutors. And he continues to. Michael Brown's attitude is this: when you're in court, the judge is your enemy. Take no prisoners.
The judge is your enemy. The
courtroom's a battlefield, the judge is your enemy, your lawyer's an enemy spy.
And take no prisoners. Exactly.
Hair, teeth, and eyeball on the floor.
Now, what do you think of that one? Good luck in California. Was that in California?
I don't know which of the three. Actually, I think he's done a couple of them in Michigan.
Yeah, I think there's certain states where that might not work too good, but well, you know, I'm open to any tool to rein in the judges. So send me the information. Anybody else who didn't, ma'am?
I got a question here. How and who picks the process of the people who serve on grand juries? Because I know a case where a doctor, physician's wife served on a grand jury and had personal contact with drug addicts and all. And why is it open to the public? From what I understand, there's only a very select few of our society that are allowed to serve on grand juries.
Yeah, there's a very specific selection process, and judges have a lot to do with it, unfortunately. But once again, it only takes one out of the, how many? 58? 58 grand juries throughout the state. So we just need one. Yes, ma'am.
You were mentioning a few moments ago about judges taking children away from their families.
Yes.
We're familiar with a case in Connecticut where 3 judges have taken children away from their mother, and all of them have, they gave the children to the pedophile father.
Mm-hmm.
And this mother is still, since the last 6 years, still does not have her children because these judges have taken one judge and another judge and another judge. And what it is that they're contributing to the, what do you call it, benefit of the pedophiles. And that's happening all over the state of Connecticut. We know because we've been working with the case.
It's happening in the state of California too. Unfortunately, it's happening all across the country. There's a theory, a very poor theory called parental alienation syndrome that was fabricated by a Harvard professor who starts talking about this theory, and it turns out he's a pedophile himself.
What's the theory?
Well, the theory is that there's a woman in particular has a particular affinity to alienating the child from the father and using false accusations. And unfortunately, there is some truth on occasion to that. Obviously, that does happen on occasion. But this theory has become, anytime a father is molesting the children, he can use this theory and get them back and essentially say she's alienating my children from me. And so if judges buy into this theory, then it can be pretty dangerous stuff. And it's happening, and it's unfortunately happening with predominantly male judges who have had particularly bad divorces themselves, so they're predisposed to be ruling in favor of the men. And we actually asked the presiding judge to no longer allow any sitting judge to rule in the family court if he's had a contested divorce. Yeah. Because it just any more than you'd want a judge who was ruling in a criminal court to be a convicted felon. I mean, it's not. It makes about as much sense. I mean, he's going to be predisposed to the defendant in the same way that a judge who's had a nasty divorce is going to be predisposed to the father. And so we have to weed those people out. It doesn't mean they couldn't be good judges in another area, but they shouldn't be sitting in family court. Unfortunately, our letter was ignored, like so many.
Question, what can we learn from the Europeans and that part of the world, and they're dealing with these type of situations, the conditions of their society?
Well, that's about an hour-long lecture. I don't. We can. There's some interesting things going on, and actually a lot of Blackstone's commentaries and all that comes from common law in England, and a lot of our law is based on law that's come to us from England and other places, Western culture. So I think we can learn a lot, but I also think we can fine-tune the system we have, and we begin with the judges. I mean, that's the place to start. Unfortunately, if we don't start there, the system's broke, and until we fix that part of the system, it's not going to change. So that's where we start.
Thank you, Mike. You know, Mike was asked on short notice to come and speak tonight instead of Larry Clayman. It was gracious of him to make the time necessary to come and be with us tonight. Several questions were asked, which I want to briefly answer for you. One was about Nisara, which is one of those wonderful, great propositions of law that the establishment powers don't want us to pass. Unfortunately, the problem is that a lot of falsehoods also are going around it. I got an email, for example, about it, that it's been secretly passed, and they're going to announce it. No. You know, and then one of the very first links to that was to the Treasury Department saying that, you know, this thing has not even been introduced, not less passed. So you got to be careful in the freedom movement. I don't know who brought up that question. When you hear about stuff out there, folks, what I always say, you know, check it out. Don't just believe in people saying stuff, you know. It's not there. This is how they make us look bad in the freedom movement, in the major media, because we don't do our homework to verify stuff, you know. The rumors go around, this thing's already passed, it was never introduced at all. Okay. Moreover, on grand juries, I'm really glad to hear that there's a lot of interest and curiosity about the grand jury in this room, because they do have awesome powers, especially in California, Nevada, Arizona, and many of the states, inherent powers. Okay? In California, for example, in Penal Code 917 clearly provides that the grand jury may investigate any crime within their jurisdiction, which is the county. Furthermore, there's another Penal Code 919C, which I found very few people who ever heard about, which provides that if the grand juror, any grand juror, becomes aware, if the grand jury becomes aware of the corrupt misconduct in office, of public officer, of any description, that could be politician, police, prosecutor, or judge, there's no exception, that the grand jury must, it shall inquire and look into it. Okay? And that they also, Government Code Section 3060, may accuse that government official of a corruption and misconduct in office, put them on jury trial to be fired from their job. And in fact, there was a specific section following that says if the official that's accused of corruption in office for misconduct is the district attorney himself, and the grand jury can't do that, obviously, then the judge must appoint the district attorney of an adjoining county or another person to prosecute the prosecutor. Now, what better vision you want? What better statutory construction and framework do you want that's already there? We don't need to pass an amendment, as wonderful Larry Dodge and my friends in South Dakota are doing, which I'm glad they're doing it, and pass it out, okay? It's already there. Black and white, the letter of the law. And I tell you, there's court cases that the judges in California have been indicted by grand juries and jailed, have been accused of corruption in California and fired from their job by the trial jury. Okay? Nobody's above that. So one of the things we're talking about, because Mike and I talked about this, you know, in a while past, to kind of rekindle our conversation we had tonight about it, is that we're looking at, you know, what we need to do, really quite frankly, is two things. Number one, contact the current grand jurors and educate them about the inherent powers that they already got. Here's the law. And when the district attorney or county council lies to them and tells them, oh, you don't have any jurisdiction over judges, or you cannot investigate without the district attorney initiating it, you know, they ignore that and move on. And if the district attorney is in the way, they can accuse that district attorney or county council himself for corruption and misconduct in office, for obstructing the grand jury's work, and they can indict him for conspiracy to obstruct and pervert justice. for obstructing the grand jury's work. Yeah, they got the power, folks, already. What more do you need? So we got to let them know about it, and that's, guess whose job that is? That's right. That's why I put out those 2 pamphlets. I guess I'm probably going to be not enough of them by tomorrow. On grand jury power, the key to restoring honest government. And in fact, there's one particular about that even judges are not above the law when it comes to grand juries. And the second thing you can do is what somebody else asks, is how do I get on a grand jury? Well, basically, there's a different process in different counties in California and throughout the United States, but essentially, all you got to do is apply. There's generally a random selection process of some sort, or partially random process, that you get picked on there. So, yeah, someone like me, I applied, and they specifically make sure I didn't get on the random pool, because they know me. I was fighting the corrupt judges in Orange County, okay? So I got a history. But if enough of us apply, okay, on that, someone's going to get on there, right? Now, the problem is they only pay $25 a day plus travel expenses to grand jurors, okay, which is pittance, of course. So unfortunately, unless you're financially independent or retired, basically you can't do it, financially speaking, you know. But I see a lot of faces here, you know, some, you know, over 60-year-old here, and your friends, right? I see some retired faces. So, you know, hey, how about it? How about some of those, you know, white beards, okay? We'd like to see some of those in grand jurors. Let's apply for it. Let's get on it, okay? And there's, and all over the country, for example, also. People don't know. Most states have a grand jury system. And one of the purposes of having these freedom rallies is we get various individuals from the Fully Informed Jury Association, from Jail for Judges, from Judicial Watch, from We the People Foundation, and others, to exactly come together and discuss these ideas and hash them out. See how we can work together and combine and really produce some results out there, okay? There's a question. Gary, you want to comment?
I know you've researched that area quite a bit. You and I talked. Isn't it true they no longer have a grand jury in England, where it originated?
That's right. The grand jury system in England was, by 1930s, it was abolished because of the fact that it's failed to serve its usefulness, they say. In other words, the people, their conscience gave it up. Okay, they stopped using it, just like they gave up the right to keep and bear arms a few years ago in England. The total ban of guns in England because people didn't stand up for it. I mean, believe it or not, these kind of meetings, hearings, books, videos, material do make a difference out there when you get the word out. Yes.
And beware. Within the last couple of months, the Arts and Entertainment Network had on their website, on their homepage, a poll regarding juries in the jury system. And like a typical media outlet, what they did was they editorialized in their introduction. This is to figure out whether the jury system is outmoded and should be replaced with something else. And beware, because that's exactly how it starts. You know, it's just some media thing, some media poll. We're going to have some television shows about the jury, you know. But when you start to go down that route, should it be replaced? Has it outlived its usefulness? You end up in a situation where England is today. We do not want to copy that.
And I'll give you a little history about that. Do you guys know that in about 1905, the San Francisco local government was so corrupt that the grand jury investigated and indicted many of the top officials, okay, fired them, charged them, okay. They cleaned up the government and literally, practically, they ran the San Francisco government with the power that they exercised. You see, the founding fathers of California and many of the states, they had a good reason why they put grand jury there, okay, and they give them such awesome powers. So if you want to clean up government, folks, one of the things you could do is let your friends know, hey, just go apply for grand jury, okay? And then contact Freedom Law School, contact Judicial Watch. In fact, you know, contact Fully Informed Jury Association, because we're all becoming aware of this, folks. You know, this information about grand jury, which we're sharing with you, 6 years ago was not known at all to anybody. I talked to Gary Zimmerman about it, Mike about it. You know, I said, you know about these stuff? They said, We never heard about that. What's Penal Code 919C? Never heard about that, right? You know, Tom Stahl didn't know about FIJA, others. We're getting this stuff out there. Okay, so it does make a difference because all it takes, as Mike's told you, is 12 out of 19 grand jurors in most counties in California, or in the smaller counties. Okay, you got I think like 7 out of 11, and they are unstoppable. Just get 1 or 2 good people, okay, who know the law and the rights, and they can educate the others. Okay. Before we wrap it up for tonight, I want to mention that tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. Pastor Wiley Drake, who is a great supporter of the jury system and jail for judges and independent jury and grand juries, and has been speaking at our events before, will be conducting a morning service prayer from 7:30 till 8:30 a.m. So you don't have to miss on church if that's something that you were planning to do and we're saying, oh, I'm going to miss that. You can be with him, and I think it'd be a very... Pardon me? Right here in this room, 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. And then at 9 o'clock sharp, guess what we're going to be starting with? The first subject will be, interestingly enough, power of the juries to restore honesty and justice in government. So with and the speakers are Tom Stahl and Patricia Michael on the board of directors of the Fully Informed Jury Association, who drove down from Washington State to be with us, as well as Ron Branson, Barbara Branson, and Gary Zerman of Jail for Judges. It'd be a very lively, exciting time, I'm sure, followed up by Paul Balmer. He'll share with you how not only he won over $300,000 from the California Franchise Tax Board for the criminal violations of law they did against the violation of his rights, but also what he plans to do. The upcoming lawsuit is going to be much, much bigger into the multi-millions of dollars. So with that, we hope that you don't stay up too late, folks, and get some sleep. Bright and early be here, and let's have a great time. Bob Schultz, by the way, so you know, in the afternoon, by the way, we'll have Lorraine Day will be right after lunch, and then at the conclusion, we will have Bob Schultz, who's literally flying in to be with us tomorrow because of the ad in USA Today. He got very, very busy with calls, and so he had to delay his plans to come here so he could take the calls and work that he had to do. So please get some rest. And one thing else I want to mention, if you think your friends might be interested in this, the last Bob Schultz's speech, the last speaker of the day, will be completely open to the public at no charge. So if you wanted to get your friends in here and they gave you the excuse as, oh, it's too much money, I got better things to do, you know, they got no excuse, you know. Come on down at least to hear the last speaker, Bob Schultz. Get introduced to everything and everybody else out here, folks. Okay, so if you're going to be doing anything, perhaps, call your friends, see if they can come for tomorrow. If not, for the whole day tomorrow, for the last part of it with Bob Schultz. Okay, with that, pardon me?
What time will he be speaking?
Bob Schultz will be speaking at 3 o'clock. Yeah, okay, approximately. The program will be available tomorrow, but about 3 o'clock. Okay, thank you. I'll see you all tomorrow morning.